this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. I'm always excited about episodes and our guests, but today is extra special for me. So we have one of our very own with us today, our administrative assistant who was promoted to director of operations in Compassionate Counseling Company. She's been with us for over a year and a half now, and she's truly transformed our practice. So I get the opportunity to spend some time with her today. I'm going to share, or she's going to share, her career climb with you all. And we're going to talk about that administrative role within a business, how essential it is, and some of the components that help to make it successful. So Brianna Pelletier, welcome to the show.
Hey, Julia. Very, very excited to be here. I am not only a big fan of podcasts, I am, as you know, a big fan of you. So this is quite exciting for me.
So this is such a treat. When I had the idea for the show, of course, you think, all right, there'll be some solo episodes where you'll talk about topics that you're passionate about, and then you'll have the opportunity to bring on guests. But something like today really brings this full circle for me, where, I get to spend time with you in a different way and kind of peel back the layers and learn a little bit more and share you with the world. So fill everybody in on your background and how you got to be doing the work that you're doing now.
Sure. So yes, my name is Brianna. So I'm from the Providence, Rhode Island area, so close to Fall River where Julia is. My academic background is in psychology. I have my undergrad degree in psychology. After graduating, I wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go back to school at some point, but as we'll probably get into, I'm a bit of a type A, so I really wanted to know for sure, like what I wanted to do before I committed to doing more school. Yeah. So I kind of, I went into a role as a practice manager at a much smaller, just two clinicians. It seemed like a great mix of my interest in business and my interest in psychology, and a good way for me to kind of get my foot in the door and, maybe figure out a little bit of a path that I wanted to take. Then life happens, the pandemic happened, fast forward, multiple years. I am now finally starting to go back to school and getting my master's. But I actually, part of my hesitation in going back to school, or part of the delay, was that I really found myself enjoying the business and admin side of things. It satisfies some part of my brain, tackling problems. And so I was doing some work for another practice, very part-time, and my employer was aware that I was looking for some more hours and was part of a Facebook group that Julia was in, and saw Julia's post about looking for an admin assistant, and we connected, and voila. It really was. I don't know what my expectations were, but these certainly exceeded any expectations that I had.
Oh, the same goes for us. Having you as a part of the practice has definitely far exceeded what I ever anticipated. And utilizing virtual assisting companies before finding you, because in all reality, we were in a period of growth, and I didn't really have a clear vision of how big the practice would grow. A lot of that was dependent upon need and dependent upon individuals that wanted to work for the practice and them being the right fit. And so we continued to grow, and I was purchasing packages each month. And so I think it started off with maybe 10 hours and then 20, and then it got to 30. And then it made sense with the size that we were at and the amount of tasks to be completed that we should really find somebody who could work with us primarily. And so, yeah, I was really happy that the connection was made. And so you came on board, and we had some systems in place, but obviously they need to be scalable. We need to be able to multiply. And you just took what we had and ran with it. So I guess share with everybody your experience kind of coming into a practice that was a little bit larger and kind of developing your own systems and processes for client acquisition.
Yeah, actually, I think it was kind of a beautiful thing that there was a lot of room to grow with,
Yeah.
there were some systems in place, but there was a lot of room for me to create my own. I saw definitely
Mm-hmm.
a need for some better and more efficient systems to be put in place. And since there wasn't already a very super defined process, there was some, like a basic skeleton of how things were going to go. But
Not
on
the dashboard we have now.
Exactly, exactly. Um, so that was actually kind of great because it wasn't like I had to do a lot of modifying what already existed. I kind of got to create it from scratch a bit, and kind of put in what I needed. So I joke sometimes. So we have something called the admin dashboard at Compassionate Counseling Company, which is it's a Google sheet and it has, gosh, I don't know how many tabs, but I joke that it is essentially just my brain externalized into like a document because it has so much, it is so useful. And yes, the practice has grown, and the importance of having great systems with the information that you need in a easily accessible and intuitive way is just
Mm-hmm.
so important, becomes increasingly important. And as we'll talk about now with bringing somebody else in to help me with my role, um, there's definitely some challenges in having to explain things that have only lived in my head up until now to somebody else. It's not impossible. It's just something that I realize as I'm going through and training. But just having these systems in place so that everything is replicable, and
Mm-hmm.
we can follow uh, the flow of information and how things move through from a new referral to
Mm-hmm.
communication with that person to setting up the initial intake appointment and so on.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's walk everybody listening through to kind of how this position evolved and then where it's at right now. So when you had first started, we have a biller as well that we utilize. We're an insurance-based practice. And so we had some systems in place for claim submission and following up on denials and rejections, but there was not a really good system for verifying insurance benefits in the beginning, especially as we grew. The biller that we have does not really have much client contact. She's much more of a behind the scenes role. And so when Brianna first started, there were the basics, right? So it's answering the calls that come in and responding to the email inquiries. It's managing the clinicians' openings in their schedule and trying to get those filled, getting a sense of each clinician and kind of what populations they serve, their age preference for clients, and kind of what areas of specialty they have, and really trying to match client and clinician effectively. And so that was really the basics at the beginning. And then we gradually started to add more and more tasks as I obviously saw how proficient Brianna was, how efficient Brianna was, and that she had been doing a lot of additional tasks for this other practice. And so that has expanded to managing a lot of the accounts receivable and taking care of the client portal, so sending clients all of their initial documentation and creating timeframes for people, which is really important so that not only are the clients aware, the clinicians are aware, and so giving them that 48-hour turnaround time to get everything in so that the clinician can review the intake questionnaire and make sure that they feel that the client's a good fit. And so then from there, it even evolved to some of the claims and insurance piece, where, as we know, clients' insurance coverage changes a lot. They can lose coverage suddenly. And so that can generate a balance. And so having to navigate that. So Brianna has now been somebody who's on the phone with the insurance companies, verifying those benefits and helping with some of the claim piece. So now we're at a point where we obviously want to continue to support her within the practice, but with this additional component of her life going back to school, I knew that that would be a lot to juggle. And so we worked together to find somebody that we could bring on, that she could train. And I think the timing was really important there to kind of identify that person early on, get them up to speed this summer, so that now with you taking on more courses, this person will hopefully be more prepared to offset some of your days. So what else would you like to say about that, kind of how the progression has happened and then the position that we're both in now?
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm gonna try and make this a streamlined train of thought here. So my first thought is it was really fantastic that it was a gradual build in responsibility. I think that that's always a great way to go. Just
Mhm.
gradual build. That way, you make sure you have some fundamentals down before you add anything on. And I am very grateful that Julia has entrusted me with all of these additional responsibilities. I do think one thought that I had when you were kind of going through that evolution at the very beginning,
Mhm.
I was not, if I'm remembering correctly, I wasn't doing any of the eligibility checks, and that really was a bottleneck, because Maggie is fantastic, but she is not somebody who's like available 8 to 5 Monday through
Yes,
Friday.
accessibility is a lot different.
Right. So I was
Mhm.
waiting for her to respond to me and confirm people's eligibility, and that was, holding things up on the scheduling end.
Right.
So I think that, for other practices, one takeaway would be I think it does make sense to have somebody who is skilled in doing eligibility and benefit checks,
Hmm.
person who is involved in scheduling. Just if that's possible, if that's at all a
Yeah.
possibility, I think that that is a great and efficient way to do things.
Well, and
Uh,
just to piggyback on that, that's a great point that, we don't always do things perfectly. And I think the most important thing in business ownership in general, and you had even spoken to this in the very beginning about how, like, you see an issue, you jump in, you problem solve. That I think being fluid and having regular touch points and open communication and being willing to adjust a process if it isn't working. And I remember vividly the conversation you and I had where you had already gotten acclimated to the practice and were wowing all of us. And we were seeing, like you said, this kind of bottleneck. And we both were kind of like, wouldn't it make so much more sense if you're already the person who's getting the clients ready to go and sending them that confirmation of your appointment is official, this is who you're meeting with, here's how to find them, to also then add that additional component of, and we verified your insurance and you do have mental health coverage, but there is going to be a copay or a deductible. Getting all of that squared away in the very beginning so that everybody's on the same page. Not to say that those things don't change down the line. And sometimes we're given misinformation by insurance companies, and sometimes coverage can change and whatnot. But that was a game changer for us. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other thing, like, so I had familiarity with billing, not in the state of Massachusetts actually before. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
there was just some specifics about Mass Health and such that I had to learn.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did have that a little bit of that experience. And then yeah, and then down the line as I've started taking over a bit more of the billing and claims side, I think that that's also been really important because it is really vital to get on top of those things as quickly as possible
Yeah.
and mitigate those issues, any sort of loss of coverage, lapse of coverage,
Mm-hmm.
ensuring that we get on that ASAP so that we can inform the client and make a plan so that, a client doesn't continue to meet for sessions and, rack up a balance or whatever the
Yeah.
case is. And so I think that it's been useful not only for us as like as a practice but also for the
Yeah.
clients that we serve, that we have been able to kind of make a process for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. So they go into it knowing what to expect and there's less surprises, which is so helpful. And another piece that I can speak to, which has been incredible to see happen. So we use Simple Practice as our electronic health record, and that enables all of the team members to communicate with each other securely. And with Brianna not being physically in our location, which she does such a great job that a lot of clients have actually shown up in the office to see her and she isn't there, which they don't realize, but that the clients or that the clinicians have been able to build a relationship with you and that you get to know them and their style and their caseloads and kind of their preferences. And so it's been so wonderful to shift from the early stages of the practice where a lot of the priority was getting spots filled. You know, clinicians obviously wanted to come in and do their job, and we could be more of kind of a generalist practice. And now, as time has gone on, we've been able to fine tune a little bit more, where even though we still serve the whole family and a range of ages, we provide individual, family, couples counseling, and groups, that we can customize a lot more. And so if we have a clinician that comes on board, for example, we have several that are certified in perinatal mental health, for example. They may want to see the majority of clients on their caseload that are kind of dealing with a lot of those issues, but that there can still be somewhat of a mix and that we can really customize that, which has been so nice. So can you speak to that at all? Kind of that relationship that you formed with the clinicians, and anything that you could say to anyone listening about how to promote that, or because I'm assuming that's something you would encourage to anybody listening.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing I know that the person who was doing this job before me was not local. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's been, although I'm not in the office day to day, I have the ability to go to the office. I have the ability to go to
Right?
events and see people in person, which is very nice and always something I enjoy doing. Um, and then I think just outside of that, ensuring I try my best to communicate with clinicians, of course, not bombard them with messages, but do a bit of rapport building, ensuring that they know what my role is, what they can, rely on me for, and, just making sure that I have a connection with them. I
Yeah.
think that that makes it just better on both ends, all
Yes.
ends. And so that's been a really important part in, I think, of my role as well. And yeah, my role has evolved. So I think also making sure that I communicate, and Julia does a fantastic job of this as well in our team meetings. Just reviewing the the tasks that I'm taking on and what they can send to me, etc.
Yeah, I think that's another huge piece, is including you in those team meetings, which we didn't necessarily do in the very beginning. And then as your role has evolved, it made so much sense. So I'm able to kind of pass that microphone to you. We touch base, and there are certain things that are really helpful for you to be relaying to the team, reinforcing, reminding them. And then, it's also your presence, and, it's a face to the name, and it just fosters even more of that connection. And you're right, being able to include you in, our holiday party or different gatherings that we have is really nice for team building. And then I would even say the piece that's evolved that's been really incredible to see too, and a lot of times it's not always the best case scenario, but seeing how you really shine in these situations with clients. So obviously in an administrative role, we assume that you're going to be handling, some scheduling and some of the logistics with a client. But there are even times when there might be an issue, when there might be some confusion around an appointment time or an insurance issue or a balance, and having you kind of on that front line to try to manage it as well as you can, be empathetic, show compassion, obviously kind of operating with a lot of the values and what I really try to maintain in my business practice, having that confidence that you're also doing the same. And then having those times when we work together where maybe you have done everything that you can, but it really does make sense for someone in my position to step in and just reinforce. And so I've seen a lot of that play out as well. So we've kind of shed light on the evolution of your role, how invaluable you've been with our team. But I also think if there's somebody listening that's maybe kind of on the fence, do I need somebody in this position? What would you say would be some of those kind of telltale signs that it might be time to find somebody in a position like you? And hopefully, we're shedding light on how that can be not only helpful in kind of the growth and expansion of a practice, but improving systems, improving clinician satisfaction, and also with the client acquisition piece, making that go a lot smoothly. But any thoughts on somebody listening who might be questioning, can I really afford this? Is it really worth it to me? And kind of knowing when it's time to find somebody like you. Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, I think in a similar way to the reason why a clinician would want to work for a group practice, i.e., they can focus on the therapeutic work,
Mhm.
and not have to worry about the admin side. I think for a practice owner, when it gets to the point where the admin tasks are getting in the way, distracting from taking up the bulk of your time, and taking you away from the running the business, the parts that you enjoy the most.
Hmm.
Not that there's, I know that you enjoy, like, talking to clients and such, but I know, or at least I think my understanding is that, having me has freed you up to do some different things, and also to just focus more on your role as the practice owner, doing some supervision, etc. So yeah, I think that that's the best rule of thumb, and you can
Hmm.
start small, just
Definitely.
have somebody take on whatever the little corner of tasks that you need. There's probably somebody out there that's willing
Hmm.
to do it.
Yeah, and it can build from there. I mean, one thing that I can absolutely thank you for in large part is enabling me to really step into this role of CEO. And having had the practice for 7 years, and it's been about 3 since we started hiring clinicians, this is the first summer, and I would say the first time in the practice where I've truly felt like I can embrace that role because I have somebody like you, and we have our clinical director, Kelly, and we have April, who is a clinical team lead. And so everybody really has kind of a clear cut set of responsibilities, and the trust is there. And so for me to be able to, yes, I mean, really focus on kind of a vision of where the practice is going to go, and, jumping in, and whether it's, finding the right people for the right seats and bringing on new team members, whether it's, different things within the practice, it's much more working on the business instead of in the business. So having you and Kelly really manage a lot of those day-to-day operations has really freed me up to do a lot of other things that benefit the practice.
Right.
So, yes, I think that that's a great point. And I think it's helpful for people to hear that, because a lot of times what I hear from consulting clients or mental health practitioners or entrepreneurs that are hesitant, a lot of that hesitation comes from, this is our business. And so you obviously having your own as well, we can see all of those plants in the background, like knowing that you do things a certain way. You have your own vision, you have your idea, and to find people that are going to have a level of investment that parallels yours is really tough. And it's almost unreasonable to expect that of somebody who works for you. They have a job, they have a set list of tasks, they get compensated for that. And I've been so fortunate to find in the three of you more of a level of investment than you would typically see in a standard person working for you, which I've been so lucky. So, yeah, I've been able to see that play out and how that looks, and to be able to do things like this podcasting and doing some
Right.
consulting. And so,
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that that's so important because, for you, I'm sure that there was some difficulty in letting go of some of those tasks or things that
you
you were
feel that
handling.
on the other end? Yeah, I
I
still
mean,
struggle with
I
that.
mean, I'm experiencing it now just with training somebody to do
Yes.
this work too. There's a certain level of, like, there's nobody else in the world who can do this like me, which is completely not true at
Right.
all. Yeah, so just because you can do something doesn't mean that you have to. There is somebody else who can.
Sure. Great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So let's speak on that a little bit. And then I want to talk more about kind of you and this next venture. So, bringing on an additional person in this role, training them, getting them acclimated. So, you were speaking to some of those challenges of, you've been doing it and doing it well for an extended period. And there's that question of, is somebody else going to do it as efficiently, or kind of the way that I'm guiding them? What are some other things that have come up in that process to prepare for this adjustment?
Yeah, so I think that it's going to be really important, especially with both of us working remotely, that we keep lines of communication extremely open. And with everybody, there's a certain, like, you and I had to work on how we communicated, and just different things that different expectations that we had, and making sure
Yeah.
that there was some things that I kind of just took over without reviewing with you, and so, yeah, I think that I am going to have to, of course, learn as I go a bit. There will always be mistakes that are made, in giving myself and Vanessa, who are bringing on, the grace to make those mistakes and learn from them.
Yeah.
So I'm, first of all, just really grateful that Julia has been able. has been so fantastic and willing to, have me bring, have her bring somebody else on to help me out so that I can, move through this next chapter and do school and not get
Mhm.
completely burned out. And I'm also just excited to take on this new role as, of training and supervising a bit of,
Yes.
so that I can work more on my communication and my communication skills. I think that's going to be a big takeaway
Mhm.
from this whole experience.
Yeah, I think the communication piece, another thing that I would add in is really getting clear on what makes sense to communicate in writing, let's say through messaging. And then Brianna and I got great at voice memos. There are things that sometimes I might put the client name in simple practice, and then I'm providing more context without anything identifying in a voice memo
Hmm.
because it's just too complex to convey adequately in writing. We also know when to jump on a call, and we have our regular virtual video touch points every week. And so I think for every practice, it's going to be a little bit different, but figuring out the best ways to have those opportunities to make sure that all of that stuff is clear. And I think the other piece too is things are going to happen. I mean, we as a practice currently serve over 700 clients, and we're
Wow.
averaging anywhere from 20 to 40 new referrals a week. That's a lot of communication with clients. That's a lot of kind of back and forth. Things are going to happen, especially in an insurance based practice where there's so many moving parts. And I think the key, and you've done really well with this, and I've tried to do well with this, is that when things happen, it's so much more of like, help me understand what happened there instead of it immediately being this kind of like critical approach. And then from there, it's like, okay, that makes more sense. What do we do about this? How do we adjust a system or a process to improve it and make it better? And that seems to have worked well. I would attribute a lot of this to the Enneagram. So knowing your number early on was so important because knowing that you are an achiever, it became very clear to me that you were going to knock these tasks out of the park while we had you with us, but that you were going to continue to pursue other things. And how can I support you in that and recognize that ability within you to take things and run with it and allow you to do that, which was so good for me as an Enneagram 1 who's a perfectionist and a
Hmm.
rule follower. And I want to make sure everything is like moving forward solidly, smoothly. And so, yeah, like being able to trust somebody else to do that. So we've gotten into a really nice rhythm, but I think the key for people listening is that it takes time. And so much of it is just like with any relationship. It's communication, willingness to try to make it work, improve it. Anything you would say to that?
Yeah, I think it's been really important. We're still kind of doing this. We're still nailing down some
Mhm.
policies and systems because things come up that sometimes challenge or, throw a question mark into something like, actually, with this variable and this variable, now what do we do about this,
Mhm.
And so
But you
I think,
thrive in those situations. I mean, like, okay, here's an issue. What are we going to do about it? And I think you are really good at jumping in. And, like, I think one thing that was lacking previously, and I see this sometimes even in other roles beyond just this one, if someone can take kind of ownership for their piece, and I really try to work on that myself, then it's like, okay, what do we do about the other components now that that's out there? And I don't know, I just think that that sets the conversation in such a different direction than if someone isn't willing to do that. And that's just a level of maturity. And I think it's gives us more to work with. And then it's like, okay, there's that piece, and now let's figure it out. And then we can bring it to the team. This is
right.
what has happened. This is what we've done about it. And this is what is going to happen moving forward in similar situations.
Yeah, and so, obviously the more time I've spent with the practice, the more of these
Yeah.
situations have come up, and so now I have a blueprint for that. And so then that's, but there's always going to be more. There's going to be more questions, and you have done such a great job of guiding me through those, and then allowing me to take it on and
Mm-hmm.
move forward. I think the other piece, so I did not know I had never heard of the Enneagram before meeting you, which I thought was kind of crazy because I was a big Myers-Briggs person, very like into that. But I think that the Enneagram, oh, so fascinating. I don't know if you've done an episode on it. If so, I need to go back and listen. Um, but yeah, but learning about my Enneagram number, and I think within a business, I think that's,
Mm.
so valuable.
Yeah.
You've spoken to it a bit, but I know, like, knowing your Enneagram number as well just uh, really helps in communication and understanding a person, and is such a great tool.
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, we should do. So it's woven into a lot of different episodes, but there hasn't been one specifically on it. So yeah, I will definitely mark that down as something to do moving forward. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what led you into psychology. And
Mm.
then now this decision, it sounds like it was always part of your plan to go back to school. And you're doing that now, and it seems like very confidently. And we joke about this a lot that I feel like your level of preparedness for this program, with a lot of what you've been exposed to within the practice. I've asked you to keep me posted on that because I could see you in certain discussions with classmates having a lot to offer. So tell us more about kind of what led you down that path, and then in pursuing school, kind of staying on this track, and what your goals are.
Yeah, so I think I was pretty clear actually from, when I first went into school, that
Mhm.
psychology was definitely the path that I wanted to take. I've always
Yeah.
been so fascinated by people, by the brain, by humans in general, and how we navigate through this world. But what as I had alluded to before, I wasn't quite sure that I wanted to go and do like a social work or LMHC program, because I do have this big side of me that is, really interested and lit up by the business end of things. As Julia kind of mentioned,
Mhm.
I do have a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. I have a little side hustle, if you will, selling plants, house plants.
Mhm.
And so I wasn't quite sure that doing, client work was going to be something that lit me up on all of those levels.
Yes.
And so I think a couple of things. One, I had to get over my conception that I had made up in my brain that, I was going to be 100% sure that whatever program or what avenue I chose was going to be the right one, because there's
Mhm.
no way I could have all that information before I moved forward.
Yeah.
You get that information as you start doing the work. And so I guess the second piece would be also allowing myself to know that if this doesn't end up being a path that I enjoy, it's actually not permanent. It is a big time and money investment, but there's always a way to pivot. And then I think one of the other things was having confidence, in my limited, not limited, I mean, I'm talking to clients all day long,
Right.
not in a clinical sense, but working with clients, as much as I have been, just I maybe built up the confidence that it is something that I'm good at. And then also just seeing the need. I
Yeah.
mean, just really, I think that actually is what convinced me and got me over the edge to go back to school, is just realizing that there really is a big need, and that, I will be able to find my niche. And it is fantastic that I have all of this back end experience.
Mhm.
Um, I do think that I'll have a huge leg up over, other people in my program, and who are, new students going into the field,
Mhm.
um, because I have all of the experience of the other end of things.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting so far, within the classes, just having that understanding, and I'm really excited to learn more, and to have such an, like, what a joy to have a phenomenal resource in Julia and in all the other clinicians at Compassionate
Mhm.
Company. That is another real asset that I have going for me here, as I go through this program, and
Mhm.
move into the world as a professional, in a different way.
Well, we couldn't be more excited for you. And there's no question that all of those skills are there. And it's fascinating to me. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this plays out for you, because it sounds like the end zone isn't clearly defined yet. But the fact that you're coming into this program so clear that the business side lights you up, And I feel like for me, that was such an unexpected surprise where I went into a social work program and worked in all of these places and then ventured into private practice, not really having any of that experience or exposure, found that I had an affinity for it, really tried to learn everything that I could, wore all the hats in the beginning so that I had a really clear idea of all that it entailed, which made me a better consultant. And I think also helped me to remain mindful of what all of those roles entail so that you really are truly coming from a place of empathy and understanding when you're on the phone with an insurance company and dealing with all of those frustrations, or when you have a client on the line who's really struggling and you're trying to just get some information and kind of move them forward or determine how appropriate they are. So with all of that being said, it's exciting to see where this takes you, where you were kind of flip flopped. You're
Yeah.
coming in knowing you really enjoy the business side. You've had obviously some exposure to the client and clinical piece, but now you're going to have those foundational skills and that opportunity to work with them in a different way. And then with all of that knowledge, what are you going to do with it? So I'm excited to see where this takes you.
Me too.
Yeah, so I would love to give you the opportunity if you have any final thoughts for those listening who are in a position where maybe they are looking for somebody like you, maybe they are questioning if that's really the right move for their business. Anything that you could share that would be a really solid takeaway for them to continue to think about once they're no longer listening to the episode.
Yeah, I think that if there's anybody listening who is kind of on the precipice or toying with the idea of growing their business, I think that having somebody to assist with some of the tasks
Mm-hmm.
that are that are able to be delegated. I don't know what the adverb for that is, but
Oh, that's
um,
it.
yeah, just I think, taking the plunge, maybe not a full plunge, taking somebody in 10 hours a week, whatever it is,
Yeah.
seeing how it goes. I mean, and I'm fairly confident that if you find the right person, that you will realize that the value add is there and that it really does free you up to grow the practice, explore,
Mm-hmm.
other avenues, your interests, and I think I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I think that having somebody help out with front and back end tasks is a really valuable tool.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And then speaking from my position, seeing the level of satisfaction in the team members. I mean, there is not one person who hasn't at one point or another, typically multiple times and emphatically spoken to how much they appreciate all that you do, how it makes their job so much easier. They're able to really focus on the clinical piece and kind of stay in that zone of genius. They have that trust and that confidence in you. And then for me as well, I mean, what it's enabled me to do within compassionate counseling, but also beyond is so invaluable. So even for those of you that, might be even considering that side of things, it is such a valuable position and role in a business and such a great way to get so much exposure to kind of the back end business side and how everything works, and that you can have that ability to develop some systems and processes and work among a team and be such a vital part of that wheel. So I really appreciate your willingness to come on the show, allowing me to share you with our audience and all of the incredible things that you've done for this practice. I can't wait to see where this next leg of your journey takes you, and we'll stay tuned.
All right. Thanks, Julia, so much. This has been actually just a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it.
I can't wait for all of the clinicians in the practice to listen. I'm going to be sending this out to all of them because they all enjoy you so much. And what a nice opportunity for them to get to know you in a little bit of a different way. And they all know that you're going back to school, but to hear kind of, what your intended plan is and some of what goes into this role that I think they see, but a deeper level of understanding. So I'm excited to share it with them too. All right. Thanks, Brianna.
Thanks, Julia.
If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only. and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.